You only get one chance at a first impression. That's the tricky part about early access. But there have been so many recent examples of early access done right, Hades, Satisfactory, Valheim, that a clear blueprint has been established for developers to follow and be successful. Not only that, consumers have refined their expectations of what an early access game should be. Fun, albeit flawed, with clear potential to improve over time. So when developer Heart Machine announced that their prequel to the highly successful Hyperlight Drifter was going the early access route, I had every reason to believe they were capable of delivering that fun, albeit flawed, experience on day one. Well, here's my first impression of Hyperlight Breaker. It is indeed flawed, but it isn't very fun. Hyperlight Breaker is a 3D action roguelike. Well, sort of. It's certainly presented like a roguelike, but if you treat it as such, you will be severely punished. In reality, Hyperlight Breaker is an extraction game where you explore a beautiful open world and defeat enemies in search of gear, loot, and prisms that unlock the boss fights required to beat the game. Over time, difficulty is heightened by the main villain, the Abyss King, adding additional enemies and new obstacles Risk of Rain style. If you can make it to the extraction zone and fend off a few waves of enemies, you can return to the hub to spend the resources you've accumulated on permanent upgrades and new gear. There are roguelike elements though. Each time a map is generated, you have 4 lives to accomplish as much as you can before the cycle is completed, the slate wiped clean, and a new map created. Dying may not fully wipe progress, but weapons and gear only have a few charges, with 1 lost on each death, making survival of the utmost importance. Unfortunately, it's likely you will be dying a lot, especially early on, as Hyperlight Breaker is brutally difficult. At the core of Hyperlight Breaker is its action combat, which has a solid foundation. There is good variety amongst the melee weapons and firearms, especially once rare and epic gear with elemental modifiers are introduced. Attacks have a satisfying weight to them, giving combat a nice chunkiness, even if the animation seems stiff at times. Unfortunately, there are a myriad of problems that make combat incredibly frustrating. Enemies often come at you in swarms, overwhelming you with sheer numbers. This could be manageable, but the lock-on system is terrible, often snapping to an enemy when you're least expecting it. There is a parry that can be pretty awesome when executed correctly. It even restores health, but it only deflects in the direction you are facing. It was infuriating the number of times I attempted to parry an attack from behind my character, only for the lock-on system to snap me the wrong way, causing me to take damage. The bosses have cool designs, but they constantly spawn mobs, making it damn near impossible to actually focus on the boss, completely sucking the fun out of those encounters. All of this is magnified by severe performance issues. My setup is far from top of the line, but it's still pretty powerful. Despite that, I immediately was met with stutters and frame rate drops galore. I couldn't imagine playing this on a Steam Deck right now. Naturally, this is most noticeable when there's a lot happening on screen, which, given this game's tendency to overwhelm with swarms of enemies, was damn near every encounter. This made it incredibly challenging to manage the already chaotic fights. It also seemed to affect the timing of parries, making a crucial tool wildly inconsistent. While these performance issues will almost certainly get fixed over time, it consistently pulled me out of the experience and artificially raised the difficulty in ways that frustrated the hell out of me. A lot of these combat issues, both design and technical, already make things challenging in ways that feel bad. The core gameplay loop tends to compound this in ways that feel even worse, especially when starting out. On paper, having some equipment persist after death should make things easier than your typical action roguelike. However, normally there's some sort of scaling that makes the difficulty curve smooth. Enemies in early stages are easier than later ones. But in Hyperlight Breaker, there is no curve, and enemies seem tuned towards you having a decent loadout. If you've managed to find a good weapon or two, that's all well and good, but that can be quite the challenge at the beginning. It is possible to buy weapons and gear from the hub, if you have the resources for it. Unfortunately, it's far too easy to get stuck in a vicious cycle of lacking resources to buy gear, thus entering a run underpowered and dying before you can accumulate what you need to buy that gear. As you can probably tell, I felt incredibly frustrated for the majority of my time with Hyperlight Breaker. But I did want to call out two things I think this game does quite well. For one, the art direction is fantastic. The environments look amazing, with a striking color palette filled with blues and purples and reds that matches the eye-catching design of Hyperlight Drifter. It also does a great job creating dramatic moments of tension. My punishment for death was often so severe, especially when I had lots of good gear on their last charge, that every bit of combat felt vitally important. In particular, attempts at extraction, which required fighting through waves of enemies and an elite in a restricted space, were particularly nervy, knowing the skirmish was all that stood between me and the safety of the hub. This tension has the potential to create truly special moments of gameplay, especially with friends in 3-player co-op. I did start to make some progress once I was able to wrap my head around what Hyperlight Breaker actually expects from the player. I began by approaching it like a roguelike, just trying to accomplish as much as I could in a single life. Once I shifted to prioritizing survival and planning my runs meticulously, I was met with more success. I even took down one of the bosses a few times. I had to figure all of this out on my own though. The new player onboarding experience is extremely minimal, a massive oversight for this unique of a game. And even as my outcomes improved, I was still struggling to find the fun. The combat and performance issues persisted, and I disliked having to play so conservatively. After about 5 hours with Hyperlight Breaker, I encountered a glitch during a crucial extraction fight. Enemies were becoming stuck to my character, moving with me even when I was dodging, making it impossible to create space and avoid attacks. It was a fluky bug, something that I usually would be quick to forgive in an early access title, but it led to another frustrating death that ultimately was the final straw. At that point, I thought to myself, there are so many other things I could be doing with my time than digging deeper to find the fun in this game. And so, I stopped playing. Hyperlight Breaker is in its infancy of early access. Heart Machine has plenty of time to iterate and turn this into a great game, and they've already acknowledged the flood of player complaints and vowed to quickly release patches. I am concerned, though, that even as performance is improved and new content is added, they never managed to refine the gameplay loop to the point of actually being fun. And the reality is, Heart Machine and publisher Art Games are asking consumers to pay money right now for a game that needs more time to cook. Hyperlight Breaker may have potential in the long term, but I would keep your time and money far away for the time being. Thank you for watching. I'm a partnered creator with Minimap, who's kind enough to provide me with the code for this review. Minimap is the ultimate gaming app. It allows you to track all of your games and achievements in one place thanks to its Game Sync feature that works with PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, and Steam. You can also share updates and reviews with a small but passionate and growing community. I'm a data nerd, so I love everything Minimap allows me to track, like what systems I own a game on and total hours played. And I've discovered so many great games through reading community posts and reviews. This isn't a paid advertisement. I just really like the Minimap app and community and want to see it grow. So if you are interested, check out the link in the description. And to see more of my game reviews, please subscribe. Okay, thank you, bye!